everyone. Welcome to Perspectives for Parents. Today we have Dr. Luann Warren Solberg, who is a psychologist at Western Psychological and Counseling Services in Tualatin, Oregon, and a member of our church, Lake Grove Presbyterian Church. She has worked in community mental health, emergency room crisis work, and school-based programs. And so we're so glad, Luann, that you are here with us. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Great to be here.
So we just want to jump right into it. Today, we want to talk about suicide. According to an article that I found on the American Psychological Association, it says that we won't yet know how COVID-19 will impact the nation's suicide rate, but the disruption of routines, being cooped up and sheltering in place, and even with the loss of jobs and incomes and loss of businesses, the fear and anxiety surrounding the virus, all of this stress just elevates the risk of suicide. So we're just hoping, Luann, if you could just help us understand suicide and specifically how it affects us as parents, and then even as we interact with our children.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a tough topic, isn't it? Because I was just saying to these gals, I spent so much time as a young parent kind of worried about the mental health of my kids. I think we all do that. We can't help it. And there's something about suicide that feels so hot that it's scary to think about talking about it with our kids, or will we put the idea in their heads? And I guess, I have three major points that I want to get across. And one is that suicidal thoughts, like pondering what it would be like if you weren't born, if you weren't there, they're really normal. I think most people go through times where it's probably pretty quick before they kind of move on to why they're not killing themselves, but it's normal to have these thoughts. So just hearing, someone say that they wish they weren't here, or maybe I should get hit by a bus or something like that, it's concerning. But it doesn't mean drop everything and run to the doctor, So I think that's the idea that this is normal. Let's talk about it. Because the open lines of communication are the number one thing. So not kind of freaking out if you hear something like that from no matter what age child. Just say, well, tell me more about that. What are you thinking in terms of being really frustrated with this situation, or really discouraged about this, or really wanting to have it stop, just wishing that the pain would go away? And then hopefully through that, you can kind of sense, is that something that's just thrown out there, or is it something that you need to kind of do a few more follow-up questions, like, well, if have you thought more seriously about really hurting yourself or killing yourself? Have you thought about how you might do that? And again, this is like scary to think about, but there's only a few paths to go down. So that part feels more comforting to me. Like if, they thought about taking all their medications that they have, well, then probably you're going to have a conversation with them about keeping those medications and helping give it to them just to keep them safe, because you love them so much. I think that's the second thing that I found out about suicide that was so surprising to me, was that only 60% of the people killing themselves are depressed. So in a lot of cases, this is sort of an impulsive move. And the thought of killing themselves comes to them 5 minutes before it happens. So I think, I'm not sure exactly how I would tell kids, depending on their developmental level, about this. But I think the main point I would love parents to keep this communication with their kids about is that our feelings are so wildly variable, that we can, be on the top of the world, and then something happens and we're just down in the dumps, and we're up and down and up and down. Things change. So they've actually shown in research that if we block a means, like putting a fence up on a suicide bridge, we block them from doing something impulsive, they actually usually don't then find some other way to kill themselves. That way is blocked. So the idea of, working for waiting periods for guns, just things like that makes a lot of sense with this research, that that we feel all kinds of things. We're so much more than our thoughts and our feelings, and they change dramatically. So that's one of the other messages I would love to give kids, even really young kids, is hang on. You'll probably, it's like the weather in Colorado. Just hang on and it'll change and be something else, really soon. So I give that to my clients all the time. Like, let's just work with me on sleeping on this, and it may be better in the morning. Of course, if it's persistent, major depression is kind of this persistent low mood, low energy, lack of appetite, can't have fun over a 3-month period. It's actually really long. Really, that's when to really take seriously getting help, getting medications, something that's um, uh, an intervention, really bringing in professionals. I'm not saying wait 3 months, but just keeping in mind that depression is so much more than just a down Thursday night, because, yeah.
Right. And I feel like that's so helpful, because nowadays I feel like the word depression, like I feel depressed, is
Yeah.
common. We say, oh, I'm feeling depressed. And then having that distinction, what you were saying, the difference between major depressive, is it depressive disorder, like
Yeah.
depression, that's something that's long. And that, would you say that, I mean, we can't snap out of it, or we,
Right.
different, right? Different from feeling depressed.
Right. Yeah. Like if people have had times where they had a lot of fun, but today I'm just really low, then they probably don't at least meet the criteria. At the same time, teenagers are tricky on this one, because their depression can look a little different. Sometimes it's just wild irritability and isolation. And of course, isolation is what we're all doing right now with COVID. So that's a little problematic. But sometimes it takes the form of boom, kind of not wanting any intervention.
Like outbursts,
Yeah.
or pushing away.
Yeah. Just, kind of shutting down the communication. In those cases, teenagers, it's a waiting game. Like, wait until they're kind of ready to talk, and being around a lot to see if you can find the right time to kind of start having a better conversation with them. But a lot of times I think people can successfully take the tact of saying, probably not from ground zero, but getting around to saying, you know, with your peers as teenager, peers are so important to each other. And sometimes I think you probably hear a lot of stuff that might be a little bit concerning to you, you know, because they seem to tell each other if they're thinking of cutting or hurting themselves, taking pills, going on a bender. And um, and so sort of talking to them about how they can access adults to get help in these situations, especially something with suicide. So in doing that, you're saying, here's how you help your friends, that this is a qualitatively different level than what you're usually sharing with friendships. And adults need to be involved. You know, we can choose how we want to do that, but that's different than just you know, what's happening at school, or did you get that new pair of pants? You know, this is any safety issues like this. It's important to kind of get parents involved, even if the person, you know, is asking you not to.
And you mentioned that parents, if you notice something, to take a step. How would you suggest that parents, what would be the first call they'd make? Would it be to their childcare, you know, their pediatrician, or how would you kind of say, walk forward with me, and if I sense that I needed to get additional help for my child?
For your child, I would say that anybody that you trust in, you know, like Leslie or Lillian, somebody would help you, get you some resources about that. So like, I love the job of, you know, Leslie emailing me, do you have anybody in mind, a therapist that might be good in this situation? And I know lots of therapists, and usually, you know, with all Leslie's connections, especially, she can get you hooked into somebody that might be really helpful. And it's important to just have some help and some support if you're going through something like this, even if you're going by yourself to the therapist, because it's really hard to get your son or daughter to go, even for more ideas of how to have those conversations or things like that. Should I go on to the third one?
Yeah.
Okay, so the third main point that always comes up in my practice with people when we talk about, you know, managing, thinking about maybe taking their own lives, is it's most concerning to me when they start talking about their family, their friends being better off if they're not there, because that's obviously you know, a huge irrational error in their head. There's nobody that's the case for. So that means that depression is doing its work. And I always say depression's such a liar. It's always whispering that it's always been like this, it will always be like this in the future, and that you don't matter. You know, it's the opposite of what God tells us. And so when they start talking about the better off, I think, you know, it might be unprofessional, but that's when I say, hey, in my experience, I don't know one situation where the people are better off. In fact, the family does not recover from this. It haunts them for the rest of their lives. So not to like put a major guilt trip, but I think just sort of shocking them out of this bizarre thinking is sort of important. And as a parent, I think that's a message too, to say, I just love you so much. And I have so many hopes for you. I have seen how God created you, how He's gifted you, and how um, living kind of an abundant life is what all of us want for you. You know, so some kind of message of um, just encouragement and some statement about how much they're loved and cared for and watched and, you know, planned and all that stuff.
It sounds like, you were saying how depression is the liar. And for parents, something that we can do, whether it's to ourselves and to our children, is to speak the truth, right? And so to remind our children, I love you, God loves you. And so perfect what you said, the verse for this week, Psalm 34:8 is, God remains close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. So we want to remind them, you're not alone. That there is hope, and God loves you, I love you, and we want to see the abundant life that we know that you will live, and to help restore that hope.
Yeah, I love that, Lillian, because yeah, I just think that can be powerful for kids who they certainly don't hear that very much in their everyday life, you know, and just what plans you have for walking with them. Yeah, the not alone message is so important too. And that goes for parents also, that I mean, we were talking before this about how difficult it is on parents right now. My heart just breaks for people trying to juggle work and home. No, so little time for self-care and so much caregiving. And this is when it's, you really have to talk about donning your own mask before you don somebody else's mask. That if you're totally out of gas, you can't give anything to a child. And this is a time of running on very little gas in our tanks. So I think, it would be so easy for parents to also feel so depressed, so down, so hopeless during this time, and needing that same message of God being with us and empowering us and walking with us in this dark valley right now.
Well, thank you so much, Luann. Thank you for your time and for your words of wisdom and your experience. We so appreciate having this time to talk with you. And thank you all for joining us for Perspective for Parents. We'll see you next time. Bye.